What if the weakest class in the entire Hunter hierarchy was secretly the only one that could not die? I am Luna. The file in front of me is dated 3 months after the Aurelia Academy Spring Awakening ceremony. The cover is stamped with 2 words in red: category anomaly. Below the stamp, in smaller print, is the name of a 19-year-old boy, Theo Greystone, C rank, Shield Guardian. The class everyone in the academy called garbage. I want you to look at this photograph for a moment. It is the only photograph in the file. It was taken on the night of the awakening ceremony by a security camera in the marble corridor outside the Great Hall. The boy is sitting on the floor. His back is against the stone wall. His head is tilted forward, resting on his knees. There is no expression on his face that the camera can read. He is not crying. He is not angry. He is simply still. The timestamp at the corner of the photograph reads 11:47 at night. 316 students in the hall above him are celebrating their ranks. None of them came down to look for him. This is the story of what happened next. Now I want you to stay with me, because what I am about to tell you is not a fantasy. It is the reconstruction of a pattern that shows up in story after story, file after file, in a specific genre of serialized fiction that has now been read by close to 1 billion people in the last 10 years. The pattern is this. A system designed to measure human potential makes a mistake. It misreads one person. And the mistake is not random. The mistake is built in. Within the next 45 minutes, I am going to walk you through that mistake from the inside, using the case of Theo Greystone, the boy on the floor in that photograph, who within 90 days would rank number 1 in the academy that had laughed him off the stage. Within 6 months, 2 SS rank parties would owe him their lives. Within a year, the headmaster who buried his real reading would be standing across a room from him with nothing left to say. I will tell you who buried that reading. I will tell you why. I will tell you what hidden line appeared at the bottom of his status panel that no one else could see. And I will tell you what he was actually built to survive against, because that is the part of this file the Academy Archive still has classified. But first, I have to tell you about the morning of the awakening. The morning of the awakening at Aurelia Academy is treated, in the world where Theo Greystone grew up, the way the morning of a wedding is treated in ours. There is a ritual to it. The students are woken at 5. They are walked in silence from the dormitories to the bathing halls. They are dressed in plain white robes with no trim, no insignia, nothing to indicate the family they come from or the connections that brought them to this academy. The point of the white robe is that on this one morning, every student stands in the Great Hall as the same person. The rank they receive in the next 4 hours will determine the next 60 years of their life. So for these few hours, they are stripped of everything else. Theo Greystone was 19 years old. He had been at the academy for 4 years on a partial scholarship. His mother had died when he was 11. His father had remarried. His father's new wife had 2 sons of her own, and no particular use for a third boy who reminded her of a woman she had never met. Theo did not hate her. He did not hate his father. He had simply, by the time he was 15, learned not to be in the house when other people were. He had spent most of those 4 years at the academy reading in the library after curfew, because the library after curfew was the only room in his life that did not require him to be useful to someone. He had a few friends. He had a girlfriend. Her name was Mira Vance. She was the daughter of a mid-rank guild family from the southern provinces. She was bright. She was funny. She had a habit of laughing at her own jokes before the punchline. Theo had asked her out 2 years before the ceremony, on a Tuesday afternoon in the academy garden, and she had said yes without hesitation. He had spent the next 2 years thinking he understood what love was. I am telling you this because the academy ranking system is not the only system in this story. There are other systems, quieter ones, the kind that do not announce themselves until they reroute you. Theo walked into the Great Hall at 9 in the morning. 316 students were ahead of him in the line. The ceremony works like this. Each student steps onto a circular platform of black stone at the center of the hall. The platform has been used for the awakening ceremony for 400 years. A column of light rises around the student. After approximately 10 seconds, a holographic status window appears in front of them. The window displays their class and their rank. The entire hall sees the window. There is no private reading. There is no second chance. The window is read aloud by the headmaster, and the student steps off the platform and joins one of two groups. The S ranks and A ranks go to one side of the hall, where they are immediately approached by recruiters from the major guilds. The B ranks and below go to the other side, where they wait to be assigned to lower-tier guilds, or, in the case of C ranks and D ranks, sent home to find their own way. The platform is not a metaphor. It is a piece of awakened-era technology that no one in the Academy fully understands. It does not measure strength. It measures the potential a person was born with. It does not lie. It does not have a sense of humor. It reads what is in you, and it displays it. The hall has, over the centuries, seen extraordinary things. A girl from a fisherman's family awakening as SS rank. The son of a duke awakening as F rank, the lowest possible class, and walking out of the hall, a peasant. The platform does not care. It reads. Mira Vance went before Theo. She stepped onto the platform at 10:42 in the morning. The column of light rose around her. Her status window appeared. The headmaster read it aloud. A rank, class, Frost Mage. The hall applauded. Mira's hand went to her mouth. She stepped off the platform and walked to the S and A side of the hall, and the recruiter for the Silver Hand Guild reached her before she had taken her 10th step. Theo, watching from the line, smiled. He was happy for her. He was, at that exact moment, still happy. Cassius Vex was the boy who went next. Cassius was the son of the Vex family, one of the 7 major guild families in the kingdom. He had been told, since he was 4 years old, that he would awaken as S rank or higher. The platform read him at S rank, class Sword Saint, and Cassius did not even look surprised. He stepped off the platform and walked directly to the S and A side of the hall, and as he passed Mira Vance, he glanced at her once, and Mira glanced back, and Theo, still in the line, watching, felt the first cold thing in his stomach. He did not let himself name it. 8 more students went. Theo's number was called. He stepped onto the platform. The column of light rose around him. Now I want you to stop and imagine, just for a moment, what it is to stand in that column. 316 of your classmates are watching. Your father, who came to the ceremony out of obligation, is somewhere in the visitors' gallery. The girl you have been in love with for 2 years is on the other side of the hall, with her new guild's recruiter already pressing a contract into her hand. The light is warm on your skin. The platform under your feet is humming softly. And you are waiting for a machine that was built before your great-grandfather was born to tell you, in front of everyone you have ever cared about, exactly how much you are worth. The window appeared. The headmaster read it. C rank, class Shield Guardian. There was a moment of silence in the hall, and then someone laughed. It was not loud. It was a single, short laugh from somewhere near the back of the S&A side. But the hall was built of marble, and marble carries sound, and one laugh became 2, and 2 became a wave, and within 5 seconds, the great hall of Aurelia Academy was filled with the kind of laughter that you cannot stop once it has started, because it is not really laughter, it is relief. It is the relief of 315 people realizing at the same moment that whatever happens to them today, at least they are not him. The platform under Theo's feet stopped humming. The column of light dropped. He stepped off. He walked in a straight line across the marble floor of the hall, past the laughing students, past the recruiters who were already looking past him as if he had already left, and out through the great double doors of the hall into the marble corridor beyond. The doors closed behind him. The laughter, muffled now by the heavy wood, continued. He walked another 20 steps down the corridor. Then his legs stopped working, and he sat down with his back against the stone wall, and he put his head on his knees, and that is where the security camera found him at 11:47 at night, 6 hours later, still in the same position, because no one had come down to look for him. Not his father, not Mira, not one of the friends he had eaten lunch with for 4 years. The hall above him had emptied at 4 in the afternoon. The recruiters had taken the S ranks and A ranks to celebratory dinners at the guild houses. The B ranks had gone to the academy refectory for the standard graduation meal. The C ranks and below had been told to collect their dismissal papers from the administrative office by 6. Theo did not go to the administrative office. He sat in the corridor. At some point around midnight, a janitor walked past him with a mop and a bucket. The janitor was an old man named Bram, who had worked at the academy for 41 years. Bram stopped. He looked at the boy on the floor. He did not say anything. He set the mop and the bucket against the opposite wall, and he sat down on the floor next to Theo, and he stayed there in silence for about 20 minutes. Then he said, without looking at the boy, "The platform read me at F rank when I was your age. That is the lowest the platform reads. I went home and my mother cried for 2 days. Then I came back here and asked for a job mopping the floors, because mopping the floors at this academy paid better than any job in my village. That was 41 years ago. I have mopped this corridor about 14,000 times. My wife and I raised 4 children on the money. 3 of them awakened. 1 did not. The one who did not is a baker now. He is the happiest of the 4. Bram stood up. He picked up his mop and his bucket. He said, "The platform reads what is in you on the morning you stand on it. It does not read what you will become." He walked away down the corridor. Theo did not move for another 10 minutes, and then he stood up. And he walked out of the academy, past the gates, into the rain, because by then it had begun to rain. And he walked the 4 miles back to the rented room he kept in the academy district, because he had nowhere else to go. His father's house was a day's ride to the south. His stepmother had told him, on the morning he left for the academy 4 years before, that the room he had grown up in had been converted into a study for her sons. He had nodded politely and not gone back. He walked. Now, I want you to pause with me here, because the next thing that happened to Theo Greystone is the thing that this entire story turns on. And I want you to feel it the way he felt it, which is to say, without warning, without ceremony, with no music swelling and no narrator preparing you for it. It just happened, in the rain. On a bus stop bench, 4 blocks from his rented room, where he had sat down because his legs were not working again and his clothes were soaked through, and he had taken his phone out of his pocket to see if anyone at all, had sent him a message. There were 3 messages on his phone. The first was from his father. It read, "Heard the result. Disappointing. We will discuss your next steps when you come home. Do not waste money staying in the city." The second was from Mira Vance. It read, "Theo, I think you already know what I have to say. I have been thinking about this for a long time. The Silver Hand Guild is sending me to the Northern Training Camp next week. I cannot do long distance. I am sorry. I will always care about you." The third was from a number not in his contacts. It read, "Lol, C-rank shield. Enjoy mopping floors with Grandpa." He read all 3. He read them again. He put the phone down on the bench beside him. He looked at the rain falling on the empty street. And then a soft blue line of text appeared at the very bottom of his vision. He did not summon it. He did not ask for it. The status panel that the platform had shown in the Great Hall that morning was supposed to appear only on the platform, only once, for the public reading. But there it was, a single line of text glowing softly in his peripheral vision, where his class and rank had been shown 6 hours before. The line read, "Concealed talent, 8%, unlocking." He blinked. The line read, "Concealed talent, 9%, unlocking." He sat very still on the bench. The line read, "Concealed talent, 11%, unlocking." I want to tell you something about that moment, because it is the part of the story that almost everyone who reads this case gets wrong. They think the moment was triumphant. They think it was the boy on the bench realizing he had been given a second chance, a hidden gift, a system error in his favor. It was not. He did not feel triumph. He did not feel relief. He felt, sitting there on that wet bench in the rain, a very specific and very quiet kind of fear. Because what he understood immediately was that this line had been there the whole time. It had been there during the ceremony. It had been there when the platform read him. The platform had seen this line and had displayed C-rank Shield Guardian instead, in front of 316 of his classmates, and the platform did not lie. The platform did not make mistakes, which meant someone had told it to. He sat on the bench for another hour, watching the number climb. By the time he stood up to walk the last 4 blocks to his room, the line read 47%. By the time he reached his door, it read 62. By the time he had taken off his wet clothes and sat down on the edge of his bed, it read 88. At 100%, the system spoke to him for the first time. It did not speak in a voice. It was a sentence written across his vision in calm, white letters, the way a notification appears on a phone, but with no sound and no source. The sentence read, "Absolute defense activated." Below it, a second line appeared. Damage taken from any source weaker than the user, 0. Damage taken from any source stronger than the user, 1. Cumulative, per strike, without exception. Theo read the sentence twice. He stood up. He walked across the small room to the stone wall opposite his bed. The wall was the outer wall of the building, 3 feet thick, granite, 200 years old. He made a fist. He looked at his hand for a moment. He thought about what he was about to do. He thought about the fact that if the sentence was wrong, he was going to break every bone in his hand, and probably his wrist, and possibly his forearm, and there was no one in his life right now who would come and take him to a healer. He hit the wall. The wall cracked. A spiderweb of fractures spread outward from the point of impact, about the size of a dinner plate. A small piece of granite, about the size of a coin, fell from the wall onto the floor. His hand did not hurt. He looked at his hand. His knuckles were not even red. He sat down on the floor, and for the first time since the Great Hall, since the laughter, since the messages on the phone, since the 4-mile walk in the rain, for the first time in 18 hours, Theo Greystone began to cry. Not because he was sad. He cried because he understood, suddenly and completely, that the entire day had been a lie. The platform had lied. The headmaster had read out a lie. 316 of his classmates had laughed at a lie. His father had sent a disappointed message about a lie. Mira Vance had ended 2 years of his life over a lie. And the lie had been put there on purpose. He did not know yet, sitting on the floor of his rented room at 1 a.m. with a cracked wall in front of him, who had put it there. He did not know yet that the headmaster of Aurelia Academy, a man named Aldrich Thorne, who had taught at the academy for 33 years and was widely considered the most respected awakener in the kingdom, had pulled Theo's true reading from the platform's records on the night before the ceremony and replaced it with the C-rank display and stamped the original file category anomaly and sealed it in the academy archive. He did not know yet that Aldrich Thorne had done this because the platform's true reading had shown Theo Greystone as a class that did not exist on the official ranking ladder. A class that had not appeared in the platform's records in 400 years. A class that the platform's own internal flag system had marked, in the moment the reading was generated, as threat to existing hierarchy. Theo did not know any of that yet. He would not know it for another 91 days. What he knew that night was that the wall was cracked, his hand was not, and the system had given him 2 skills. Absolute defense. And, scrolling below it on the status panel that only he could see, a second skill that had appeared at the moment absolute defense activated. Combat endurance. Health regeneration occurs during combat, not after. He read it 3 times. He understood what it meant. If he could not be hurt by anything weaker than him, and could be hurt only 1 point at a time by anything stronger than him, and his health regenerated while he was being hit instead of after, then he could fight, in theory, anything, for as long as he wanted, without dying. He was the only class in the world that could not be killed by overwhelming force. He sat on the floor and he laughed, and the laugh sounded a little like the laugh in the Great Hall, but it was not the same laugh. It was the laugh of someone who has just realized that the joke was on the people who told it. The next morning, he walked into the slums on the east side of the Academy district, and he found a B-rank thug named Garrick who ran a small protection racket out of a tavern called the Broken Tooth. Garrick was 34 years old, 240 pounds, and known in the district for stabbing 2 A-rank hunters who had tried to clean up his operation the previous summer. Theo walked into the tavern at 10 in the morning. The tavern was almost empty. Garrick was sitting at a table in the back with 3 of his men. Theo walked up to the table. He said, I need to test something. I will pay you 1 gold piece if you stab me, once, in the chest, as hard as you can." Garrick looked at him for a long moment. Then Garrick laughed, the way the Great Hall had laughed the previous morning, and said, "Sure, kid, 1 gold piece." Theo set the gold piece on the table. Garrick stood up. He drew a long knife from his belt, a B-rank grade combat knife, etched with a basic mana channel, the kind that could punch through standard leather armor without difficulty. He grinned at his men. His men grinned back. This was, to them, an extremely funny morning. Garrick stepped around the table. He drove the knife into Theo's chest. The knife snapped. Not bent, snapped. 6 inches of steel broke off the blade and clattered onto the tavern floor. Garrick stared at the broken hilt in his hand. His men stopped grinning. Theo, in the meantime, looked down at his shirt. There was a small tear in the fabric. There was no blood. He looked back up at Garrick. He picked up the gold piece from the table. He put it back in his pocket. He said, "Thank you. The test was successful." He walked out of the tavern. There was a woman sitting on the curb outside the tavern. She was about 22 years old, thin, with dark hair pulled back in a knot, wearing a healer's robe that had once been white and was now mostly gray. Her name, although Theo did not know this yet, was Lyra Selene. She was an A-rank light healer who had been kicked out of the Silver Hand Guild 3 months earlier for refusing to participate in what the guild had called a routine cost-cutting reassignment of patient priority, and which Lyra had called, in the disciplinary hearing that ended her career, the deliberate triage-based death of 47 low-rank hunters whose treatment contracts had been deemed unprofitable. The Silver Hand Guild had revoked her license, her guild quarters, and her healing equipment. She had been sleeping in the doorway of the Broken Tooth Tavern for the past 2 weeks because Garrick, who had a complicated and not entirely understood sense of honor, did not chase her off. She had been sitting on the curb when Theo walked in. She had watched him walk in. She had heard, through the open door, the sound of a B-rank combat knife shattering against what should have been a 19-year-old boy's ribcage. She had stood up. She had walked to the doorway. She had looked. When Theo walked out, she was waiting for him on the sidewalk. She said, "Whatever you are, I am coming with you." He looked at her. He said, "I don't have any money." She said, "Neither do I." They walked together to the edge of the Academy district, and they kept walking, north, toward the Greyvale Forest, because Theo had decided, in the 11 hours since the wall had cracked, that he was going to find out exactly how far the second skill went. And the Greyvale Forest was the closest place in the kingdom rated for full S-rank parties. There was a Bone Wolf Alpha denned in the western quadrant that had killed 3 A-rank hunters the previous month. Theo wanted to meet it. I am going to skip forward now, because the next 41 days of Theo Greystone's life are well documented in the Academy archive, and I do not want to slow down for them. I will give you the summary. Day 1 in the Greyvale Forest. Theo and Lyra entered the western quadrant. The Bone Wolf Alpha attacked at dusk. The Bone Wolf Alpha weighed approximately 700 pounds and could bite through plate armor. It bit Theo 6 times in the first 30 seconds of the fight. Each bite did 1 point of damage. Theo's health regenerated between bites. After 30 seconds, the Bone Wolf Alpha, which had never in its life encountered prey that did not bleed, became confused. After 3 minutes, it became exhausted. After 11 minutes, Theo, who had spent the entire fight standing still with his shield raised, walked forward and killed it with a single strike of the Academy Training CERN Ravine. 6 adult trolls, one of them rated A rank by the Academy Threat Assessment. The fight took 4 hours because the trolls were too large to be killed with a training sword, and Theo had to bludgeon each one to death individually after exhausting it. Lyra Selene spent the 4 hours sitting on the ridge above the ravine, taking notes in a small leather journal she had stolen from the Silver Hand Guild on her way out. Day 7. The Black Hydra of the Eastern Marsh, rated S rank, last killed by a party of 9 S-rank hunters in the year of Theo's birth. Theo killed it alone in 6 hours and 12 minutes. On day 10, the Aurelia Academy ranking board updated for the first time since the awakening ceremony. Theo Greystone, registered class Shield Guardian, registered rank C. moved from position 316 of 316 to position 47. On day 14, the board updated again, position 12. On day 20, the board updated again, position 3. By day 21, a small story appeared on the third page of the Kingdom's Hunter Gazette. The reporter who wrote it had not been able to confirm the name. The reporter referred to the hunter only as the Immortal Shield, based on testimony from a Bone Wolf survey team that had stumbled across Theo and Lyra in the Greyvale Forest on day 18 and watched, from a safe distance, as Theo allowed a pack of A-rank shadowhounds to bite him for 40 minutes without effect. The headmaster of Aurelia Academy, Aldrich Thorne, read the Gazette story on the morning of day 21. He read it twice. He set the paper down on his desk. He walked to the Academy archive in the basement of the administration building, and he opened a locked drawer that had not been opened in 400 years. Inside the drawer was a single folder. The folder was stamped in red ink, category Anomaly. He took the folder out of the drawer. He sat down at the archive table. He opened the folder. He read it. And for the first time in his 33 years as headmaster of Aurelia Academy, Aldrich Thorne was afraid. Luna pauses here because I want you to sit with what is in that folder for a moment before I tell you what it says. The folder is the platform's true reading of Theo Greystone, generated at 10:53 on the morning of the awakening ceremony, before the headmaster intervened. The folder contains the class designation that the platform recorded. The folder contains the threat assessment that the platform's internal flag system attached to the reading. The folder contains a single additional line that the platform's archive system had appended automatically, and which Aldrich Thorne had not noticed on the night he sealed the folder, because he had been in a hurry and afraid and not as careful as he should have been. I will tell you what the folder says in Act 4. For now, I will tell you what happened next. On day 30, the SS rank hunter, Seraphine Halloran, the golden child of Aurelia Academy, the most decorated graduate of the past decade, and the current first-ranked hunter in the entire kingdom, walked through the front door of Theo Greystone's rented room without knocking. Theo was sitting at his small desk, repairing the strap on a piece of armor Lyra had scavenged for him. He looked up. Seraphine Halloran was 26 years old, 6 feet tall, wearing the white and gold formal robes of the SS rank registry, and she was holding a small wooden box in both hands. She said, "Do you remember me?" He looked at her for a moment. He said, "You came to the library 2 years ago. You could not sleep before your final ranking exam. I taught you the breathing exercise from the 3rd volume of the meditation series. You stayed until about 3 in the morning. You did not tell me your name." She said, "I passed the exam at SS rank the next morning because of that breathing exercise. I have wanted to find you and thank you for 2 years. I tried, after the ceremony last month, to find your name on the rank registry. I could not find it. I tried the C rank registry. You were not there either. The administrative office told me you had not picked up your dismissal papers and that you were presumed to have left the Academy district. I stopped looking. This morning I read the Gazette. I came here directly." She held out the wooden box. She said, "This was my grandfather's shield. He was an SS rank shield guardian, the last one the kingdom registered, 84 years ago. He left it to me when he died. I have never been able to use it. I want you to have it. I think it has been waiting for you." Theo took the box. He did not open it then. He opened it that evening, after she had left, and he found inside it a shield of dark gray metal etched with patterns he did not recognize, light enough to lift with one hand, and the moment his fingers touched the handle, the system spoke to him for the second time. The system said, "Inheritance recognized. Class compatibility confirmed. Shield Guardian, true class, partial unlock." Below it, in smaller letters, 2 of 9 seals released. He did not know yet what the other 7 seals were. He would not know for another 2 months. On day 41, Cassius Vex, the S-rank sword saint who had laughed loudest in the Great Hall on the morning of the Awakening, walked into the guild registration office on the central plaza of the Academy district. He was there to register a new private guild he was forming with 3 of his S-rank classmates. Theo Greystone, by chance or by something less than chance, was also at the guild registration office that morning. Theo was there with Lyra Solane to register, for the first time, the small mutual aid association the two of them had been operating informally for the past month. The association consisted, at that point, of 3 people: Theo, Lyra, and an old blind man named Owen Ash, who had once been a D-rank archer and who Theo had met by accident in a soup kitchen on day 38. Cassius saw Theo from across the registration office. Cassius walked across the registration office. Cassius said, loudly enough for everyone in the office to hear, "Look who it is, the mop floor C-rank. Did you come to register the janitors union?" 3 of Cassius's S-rank friends laughed. The clerk at the registration desk looked down at his papers and pretended not to hear. Theo did not say anything. Cassius said, "I read the Gazette story. The Immortal Shield. Cute name. You know the Gazette will print anything. They printed a story last week about a goat that could read. You think anyone actually believes that some C-rank shield guardian is killing S-rank monsters by himself? You think anyone believes you?" Theo did not say anything. Cassius said, "Let me settle this for everyone, right here, right now." Cassius drew his sword. His sword was a custom-forged S-rank longsword, etched with 3 mana channels, capable in his hands of cutting through a stone column. He was the kingdom's 18th ranked sword saint as of the most recent rankings. He had killed 2 A-rank monsters in the previous month, both with a single strike. He stepped forward. He swung the sword in a full overhead strike, with both hands, with all of his weight behind it, directly at Theo Greystone's chest. The sword struck the front of Theo's Academy training jacket. The sword shattered. Not the blade, the entire sword. The blade, the crossguard, and 6 inches of the grip exploded outward in fragments of steel and leather and wood. The fragments embedded themselves in the walls and the ceiling of the registration office. One fragment, about the size of a thumbnail, embedded itself in Cassius Vex's own right forearm, severing the tendon that controlled the grip of his sword hand. Cassius staggered backward. The remaining grip of the destroyed sword fell from his nerveless fingers. His 3 S-rank friends, watching from the doorway, did not move. Theo looked at his jacket. There was a small mark on the fabric where the sword had struck. The mark was the size of a coin. He said quietly, "You should see a healer about that arm." He turned away from Cassius. He walked to the clerk's desk. He said, "I would like to register a guild." The clerk, whose name was Edmund Wallace and who had worked at the registration office for 19 years and had seen, in his time, a great many strange things, picked up his pen with hands that were not quite steady. He said, "Of course, sir. What is the name of the guild?" Theo looked at Lyra. Lyra looked at the old blind archer Owen, who could not see Lyra looking at him, but who nodded slowly anyway, as if he had heard the question through some sense that the Academy had never tested for. Theo turned back to the clerk. He said, "The Last Shield." The clerk wrote it down. The Last Shield Guild was officially registered on day 41. Its founding charter, which is in the Academy archive and which I am reading from now, listed the guild's recruitment policy in a single sentence. The guild would accept members rejected by every other guild in the kingdom. No other criterion. No rank minimum, no class restriction, no background check. In the next 2 weeks, the guild grew to 12 members. Owen Ash, blind D-rank archer, age 61, rejected by every guild he had applied to for 40 years. Renji Kade, former S-rank stormcaller, age 44, who had quit the Crimson Sun Guild 3 years earlier after his wife, a B-rank healer, had been killed in a rift gate clearance that the guild had been warned was unstable and had ordered to proceed anyway. He had spent the 3 years since in a small house at the edge of the Academy district, drinking, refusing all guild offers. He came to the Last Shield Guild on day 46 because Lyra Solane had walked to his house and sat in his kitchen for 4 hours without saying anything, and then had said only one sentence, which was, "We are going after the kind of guilds that did what was done to your wife." He had stood up and walked back to the registration office with her. A girl named Iris Calden, 16 years old, an unranked awakener who had failed the Academy entrance exam 3 times and who had been declared, by the Academy's intake board, incapable of awakening at all. She had walked into the Last Shield headquarters on day 49 and asked to be made a member. Theo had asked her what her ability was. She had said she did not have one. Theo had asked her what she wanted to do at the guild. She had said she wanted to be in a room with people who had also been told they could not awaken. Theo had nodded. Lyra had taken her to the guild dormitory and given her the small room next to her own. By day 55, the guild had 19 members. The youngest was 14. The oldest was Owen Ash at 61. 3 of them were former S-rank hunters who had quit or been dismissed from the major guilds for refusing orders. 11 of them were unranked or low-rank awakeners that no other guild would touch. 2 of them were healers stripped of their licenses for refusing to participate in profit-driven triage. 1 of them was a former platform technician from a regional academy who had quit her job 4 years earlier after seeing what she called, in her resignation letter, irregularities in the awakening readings that she could not in good conscience continue to ignore. Her name was Helen Vero. She joined the last Shield Guild on day 58. She walked into the headquarters with a small leather case under her arm. She set the case on the table in front of Theo. She opened it. Inside the case was a portable platform reader, a piece of Awakened-era equipment that, in theory, could perform an unofficial awakening reading on any subject. The reader had been decommissioned by the Academy system 15 years earlier and was supposed to have been destroyed. Helen Vero had stolen one on the day she resigned. She said, "I have been waiting for somewhere to bring this for 4 years. I think I have found it." Theo looked at the reader. He said, "Can you read me?" Helen said, "Yes." He sat down in the chair. She turned the reader on. The column of light rose around him. It was smaller than the column in the Great Hall. It was dimmer, but it was the same light. And after 10 seconds, the status window appeared in front of him, hovering above the reader, displayed for everyone in the room to see: Lyra, Owen, Renji, Iris, and Helen herself. The window did not display Shield Guardian. The window did not display C rank. The window displayed 2 lines. The first line was the class designation. The second line was the rank. The class line read, Aegis Sovereign. The rank line read, Beyond Classification, Historical Precedent, 84 years. Helen Vero sat down on the floor. She said, very quietly, "That is the class my grandfather told me about. He worked at the Central Platform Archive for 40 years. He said the platform has recorded this class exactly 4 times in 800 years. Each time it appeared, the headmaster of the Recording Academy classified the file and the Awakener disappeared from public record within 12 months. He told me about this when I was 9. I did not believe him." Theo looked at the window for a long time. He said, "What is the Academy Archive going to do?" Helen said, "If Aldrich Thorne has not already opened the sealed file, he will open it soon. Once he opens it, he will see what I am seeing on this reader, and he will have to make a decision. He has done it before. The 4 previous Awakeners of this class did not survive their first year after awakening. 2 of them were declared casualties in monster clearances that the academies of the time ordered them into without backup. 1 was poisoned at a guild banquet. 1 simply disappeared, and her name was removed from the Academy registry within 6 months, and her family never received an explanation." Theo nodded slowly. He said, "So I have a deadline." Helen said, "You have a deadline." He stood up. He said, "Then we have work to do." Day 61. The last Shield Guild accepted its first official contract. A rift gate had opened above the village of Hollowmere, a small farming community a day's ride east of the Academy District. The rift gate was rated at the upper edge of S rank. 2 S rank parties from the Silver Hand Guild had been sent to clear it. Both had failed. The first party had returned with 3 of its 7 members dead. The second party had not returned at all. The Silver Hand Guild had then declared the village a controlled loss zone and informed the kingdom's Monster Response Bureau that the gate would be allowed to discharge naturally, which, in the technical language of the Bureau, meant that the village would be abandoned and the 412 people who lived in it would be evacuated. Although, in practical terms, the evacuation had not been arranged because the Silver Hand Guild had not provided transport. The mayor of Hollowmere, a woman named Anya Kelvern, had ridden personally to the Academy District on day 60. She had been turned away by every major guild. She had walked into the last shield headquarters at 8 in the evening with mud on her boots and no money in her pocket. She had said, "I cannot pay you." Theo had said, "We did not ask." The last Shield Guild rode out at dawn on day 61. 19 members. Theo at the front, Lyra Selene beside him with her healer's case, Renji Cade behind them. The first time in 3 years he had worn his Stormcaller robes. Owen Ash in the wagon at the back with his old bow across his knees, his blind eyes turned to the horizon as if he could see it anyway. The gate clearance took 9 hours. Theo stood between the gate and the village for 9 hours. He took, by Halen Vero's later count from the recording equipment she had brought to document the action, approximately 41,000 strikes from monsters of A rank to S rank classification. Each strike did 1 point of damage. His health regenerated between strikes. He did not move from the position he had taken at the start of the engagement. The members of the last Shield Guild fought behind him and around him, picking off monsters that broke through the choke point, and the entire village of Hollowmere, 412 people, survived the day. When the gate closed, Theo turned and walked back to where Lyra and Renji were standing. He said, "Is everyone alive?" Lyra said, "Everyone." He nodded. He sat down on the ground. He did not stand up for an hour. Day 63. The Kingdom's Hunter Gazette ran the Hollowmere story on the front page. The article named the guild. It named the guild master. It named, for the first time in a public publication, Theo Greystone. The article was read, on the morning of Day 63, by Aldrich Thorne, headmaster of Aurelia Academy, at his desk in the administration building. He read the article twice. He stood up. He walked to the Academy archive in the basement. He opened the locked drawer. He took out the folder stamped Category Anomaly. He sat down at the archive table, and for the first time, he read the line at the bottom of the folder that he had not noticed on the night he sealed it. The line that the platform's archive system had appended automatically. The line he had been too afraid and too rushed to see. The line read, "Subject identification, Aegis Sovereign, generational marker, inheritance line confirmed, maternal grandmother, Aurelia Greystone, sealed Aegis Sovereign, Academy intervention, year 1947. Aldrich Thorne sat at the archive table for a very long time. Theo Greystone's grandmother had stood on the same platform at Aurelia Academy 79 years earlier. She had been read at the same class. The headmaster of the academy at that time, a man named Cordelius Thorne, who had been Aldrich Thorne's own grandfather, had pulled her file from the platform's records and replaced it with a D rank reading and sealed her true file in the same drawer Aldrich had just opened. Aurelia Greystone had never become a hunter. She had married a farmer. She had raised a daughter. Her daughter had married a minor merchant. Her daughter had died of fever at the age of 33 when her son Theo was 11. Aldrich Thorne sat at the table and understood, slowly, that the class did not appear by accident. It ran in a line. It had been buried in his own family's records for 3 generations by his own family's hands. And the thing that the Academy had been afraid of 80 years ago and 400 years ago and 1,000 years ago had finally come up the line again. He closed the folder. He walked back to his office. He sat at his desk. He did not call anyone. He did not send anyone. He waited. Theo Greystone walked into Aldrich Thorne's office at 4 in the afternoon on day 65. He was alone. He was carrying the folder because Halen Vero had broken into the Academy archive the night before and copied the file, and the copy was now in Theo's hand. He set the folder on Aldrich Thorne's desk. He sat down in the chair across from the headmaster. He did not say anything for a long time. Aldrich Thorne looked at the folder. He looked at Theo. He looked at the folder again. He said, "I assume you have read it." Theo said, "I have." Aldrich Thorne said, "Then you know." Theo said, "I know that my grandmother was buried in this same drawer by your grandfather. I know that the class has appeared 4 times in 800 years. I know that the 4 previous awakeners did not survive their first year. I want you to tell me, in your own words, Why? Aldrich Thorne was silent for a moment. Then he said, because the class cannot be controlled by the rank hierarchy, because a person who cannot be killed by overwhelming force cannot be ordered by anyone who is weaker than them, because the entire system of guilds and academies and kingdoms and monarchies that we have built on this continent rests on the assumption that the most powerful awakeners can be threatened by even more powerful awakeners. Your class breaks the assumption. If you exist in the open, the hierarchy collapses. If the hierarchy collapses, the kingdom collapses. 400 years of stability collapses. So we bury you. We have always buried you. We will bury you again if I send the order tonight, although I expect that you have already taken precautions. Theo said, I have. Aldrich Thorne said, then we are at an impasse. Theo stood up. He said, we are not at an impasse. You buried me so the system would not change. I came back so it has to. I am not going to kill you. I am not going to remove you from this office. I am not going to expose what you did to my grandmother, although the file is now in 7 different locations and will be made public if anything happens to me or to any member of my guild. I am going to walk out of this office, and I am going to do my job, and the system is going to change around you while you sit here and watch it. That is the entire conversation. He turned and walked to the door. At the door, he paused. He said, one more thing. Mira Vance came to my apartment 3 days ago. She said she had been wrong. She wanted to come back. I closed the door without speaking. I want you to know that I did not close it because I was angry. I closed it because I had stopped needing the version of myself she could see. That is the same reason I am not going to do anything to you. I have stopped needing the version of myself that you buried. You can keep it. It is no longer mine. He walked out of the office. Aldrich Thorne sat at his desk for the rest of the afternoon. He did not send the order. Luna wants you to understand something now. The story of Theo Greystone, in the file in front of me, does not end here. There are 6 more months in the Academy record. There is the Rift Gate at the Capitol. There is the second SS rank party that the last Shield Guild pulls out of a collapsing dungeon on day 104. There is the meeting between Theo Greystone and Seraphine Halloran on the cliffs above Hollowmere on day 112, where she asks him a question that I cannot tell you tonight because the answer belongs to a later episode. There is the moment on day 130 when Iris Calden, the 16-year-old who had been declared incapable of awakening, awakens for the first time in the practice yard of the last Shield Guild, and the class that appears on Halen Vero's portable reader is a class that has never been recorded in 800 years of platform readings. There is the moment on day 147 when Renji Kade walks into the headquarters of the Crimson Sun Guild, the guild that killed his wife, with the official charter of the last Shield Guild in his hand, and asks them to surrender their license voluntarily. They do. All of this is in the file. What I want to tell you tonight is the part that the Academy Archive still has classified, the part I promised you in the first hour of this episode, the part that explains what Theo Greystone was actually built to survive against. On day 171, a rift gate opened above the Capitol. It was not rated S rank, it was not rated SS rank. The kingdom's Monster Response Bureau, which had developed its rating system over the course of 4 centuries, and which had a category called Unmeasurable that had been used exactly once in those 4 centuries, used the category for the second time on day 171. The gate was 400 meters in diameter. It hung in the sky above the central plaza of the Capitol. The thing inside it, which the Bureau's sensors could see only the outline of, was approximately 200 meters tall and was moving toward the gate's mouth at a measured rate. Every SS rank hunter in the kingdom was called to the Capitol. There were 11 of them. Seraphine Halloran was one of them. They arrived at the central plaza on the afternoon of day 171. The thing inside the gate took another 6 hours to reach the mouth. During those 6 hours, the 11 SS rank hunters held a council in the war room of the kingdom's central guild hall and concluded, by a vote of 9-2, that the capital should be evacuated and the gate allowed to discharge. The 2 votes against were Seraphine Halloran and a man named Joran Vell, in SS rank who had been a friend of her grandfather. Seraphine and Joran walked out of the war room together. They went to the central plaza. They stood under the gate. They waited. At 8 in the evening, the last Shield Guild rode into the capital. 19 members, Theo Greystone at the front, Lyra Selene beside him, Renji Cade, Owen Ash, Halen Vero, Iris Calden, the 14 others, all of them, every one. They rode through the streets of the evacuated capital, past abandoned market stalls and overturned carts, and they reached the central plaza at 8:42 in the evening, and Theo dismounted, and he walked across the plaza to where Seraphine Halloran was standing under the gate. She turned when she heard him. She said, "You came." He said, "Of course." She said, "You know what is in the gate." He said, "I know what the Bureau thinks is in the gate." She said, "Do you know what it actually is?" He said, "Halen Vero reverse engineered the Bureau's sensor readings yesterday. We do." Seraphine was silent for a long moment. Then she said, "And do you know what you are?" He looked at her. He said, Halen has been working on that question had never been built to measure, because the kingdom's response system had been built 400 years ago, on the assumption that the things that had come through the previous gates were the only kinds of things that ever would. Theo said, "I think the Aegis Sovereign class is not for fighting monsters. I think it is for fighting whatever made the gates." Seraphine Halloran was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Yes." She turned to face the gate. She said, "I am glad it is you, Theo Greystone. I am glad the system buried you and let you come back, angry enough to do this and quiet enough to do it without becoming what you were running from. I am glad I gave you my grandfather's shield. I am glad I am standing next to you tonight." He did not answer her. He raised the shield. The thing inside the gate reached the mouth. Luna pulls back now. The file ends here. The next 90 pages of the Academy archive are sealed, and they are not in my access tonight. And I will not tell you what happened in the next 6 hours of the Capitol's history, because that is a story for another night, and for a series of files that I will open for you across the next 26 episodes of this season. What I will tell you is this. The rift gates have been opening at 3 times their historical rate for the past 2 years. The Bureau's unmeasurable category, which was used once in 4 centuries and then again on day 171 of Theo Greystone's career, has been used 6 more times since. 6 in 1 year. The hierarchy that buried Aurelia Greystone in 1947 and that buried Theo Greystone on the morning of the awakening ceremony was not built to handle this. The hierarchy was built to handle the previous war. The new war is here. The class that the academies have spent 800 years burying is the class the kingdom now needs to survive it. And Theo Greystone, the C-rank shield guardian who could not die, the boy who sat on the marble floor of the corridor outside the Great Hall and was not looked for by anyone, is standing under the gate above the Capitol on the night this file closes. Because the question was never whether he could survive. The question is what he was built to survive against. I will tell you in the next episode. I am Luna. Close the file.